All right, so today I wanted to show you how to use a foam slump mold, okay? And we've got a whole bunch of them over here that were made by former students. You can make a slump mold by casting plaster. Plaster is what we use for the bats here. Liquid plaster, you cast it in a box or in a bowl, and you can get the positive or the negative form from it. But I learned from another ceramic artist that you can use this foam insulation that people use for their homes. And you can actually, these are way lighter weight, and they're a lot more durable. So something like this plaster, if somebody really carves in here deeply, you know, it actually damages the mold. But with these, they're pretty resilient. The cuts kind of heal, and they're lightweight, so to have them around, it doesn't, you know, they don't take up a lot of room. You can stack them easily, and you can really shape them and carve them into any sort of form that you're interested in. So we've got several here. You'll notice they're white because we've actually mixed up a little bit of plaster and then brushed a thin coat on the top. Just helps protect the mold, and it helps your clay dry on the mold as well. So we've got like a ton of these already, and we've used some for just carving lids. This one's carved to actually like lay the clay in, so it's more of a drape mold. But the rest of these are just slump. So this stuff is pretty easy to work with. You can take a ruler, I would, to get a nice straight cut. And you just only have to score through, hopefully you have a blade that's sharp. You only have to score through really the top surface. Here, this one's better. And then it will break on that line. So it's very easy to manipulate and work with. And then you can just kind of telescope out the blade a little further, and you can start, you know, carving it. And then once we get to a point where you've got the shape you want, then you can take a piece of sandpaper and just smooth it down, unless you like that faceted look. So these would be really good for like a small dish, or like probably a lid. You know, we could carve these into the shape of a small sugar, and you could actually make lids off of these instead of throwing them. So I thought I'd just demonstrate, you know, how to use like one of these, because in the end you want a quality product. So I just threw out a slab. I'm going to drape that on top of this mold, and I was just making sure that the size of the slab was big enough to accommodate this platter. And this was one that I carved when I first learned how to do this. So what you want to do is make sure it's big enough, first and foremost. And then what we're going to do is, just to show you how to do one that's nicely finished, is we'll just kind of cut off the extra here. And they're fairly easy to do. So you could carve your own, or you could use one of the ones we have already existing in the studio. That's sort of your call. But I thought it's a way of using a mold in an interesting way. The one that I've got on the screen on the iPad there is a platter that I cast from this mold. So that plate was basically used the same mold. And then something I'll show you when we return from break is how to actually take like a graphic image, just a high contrast black and white picture, and I'll show you how to actually transfer it right onto your piece. So we'll save it, this platter, and we'll do it on that. So these ribs, there's one that's a little stiffer. The blue one's a stiffer rib. The rubber one is a softer rib. You can kind of start with that stiffer one, and what you're going to do is kind of, you know, compress it, smooth out all the lumps and bumps, and it really helps you form it to the actual mold itself. I need to get this a little bit wet. So I would spray this before I take that finishing rib, that red rib, and completely smooth it out. But what this does is also kind of just like makes it look a little more finished. I will usually take my chop and I'll stamp the side or the bottom right now while it's nice and wet. And then I really pay close attention to, you know, the rim, or what's going to be the lip of my pot. And I'll go back and just kind of trim that a little bit now. When I'm going to let this dry, if I was going to finish it, I would let it dry for a couple days uncovered on this mold until it's firm enough that I could take it off and it'll hold its shape. And then I will take and trim the rim again, just so it looks neatly done. The inside will probably be smooth, but we'll probably want to take that rib to the inside as well. So you let them sit on here, and what happens is As this dries, it starts to kind of shrink upward. So it really pops off there very, very easily. Some of these other molds, like this one, you have to get it off right away, otherwise it starts to constrict around the sides. But we've used this one, we've used half of it. We've actually used the whole thing. It's a little challenging to get it off of there, but it does come off if you get it off in the first couple days. Same with this one. So you're just gonna pull them off, they hold their shape, and then you're ready to go. I did notice, like these and this one, you know, those are just actually hot gluing, like stacks of these together. And I've got huge sheets of this insulation foam in the storage room. You may see it in there on the shelf. So if you're interested in making your own mold, or maybe combining with one we've had, this is just one. The one I'm working on is just one, but these are like 3, I think. Yeah, you can actually see the layers coming through in this one. The last thing I saw a potter uses this technique, and they actually put like a clay coil on the bottom, and you certainly could do that. You could use your excess clay actually. I thought that was kind of a nice little touch, so that might be something you consider doing to kind of take these to the next level. Obviously you'd want to use a ruler again, but what we could do with this is actually where the foot is defined, we could come back and you could do kind of like a slip and score that on, and then you have like a raised foot, which is also kind of a nice touch. Maybe I'll do that on this one. Okay? That's it.